5 months of election saga before the PPP, backed by the international community and CARICOM, was voted in on December the 2nd. Almost 3 weeks in office, and the witch hunting and victimization and harassment of former public officials by state police have begun. We see in Kingley Village, Lincoln Lewis, a veteran trade unionist, is encountering severe harassment by the hands of Indo-Guyanese, helped by Anil Nandalal, the minister, I think, of legal affairs. In studio today with me is UK-based Guyanese educator John Jones. The big question that John will be answering is, will the opposition be prepared and ready to defeat the PPP at the next elections? And what must be done and when? John Jones will be joining me now. John Jones, welcome to Voice of the Diaspora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes, before we go straight into the program, of course, the questions are ready, and I know we're ready to rock and roll. Tell the viewers, who is John Jones, briefly?
Okay. I'm a teacher. I teach business, economics, and accounting, and I've been educated to master's levels of all three, and I'm presently studying a PhD in entrepreneurship at Essex University. So, in a way, I've been studying most of my life. That's it.
So you're qualified and equipped, and you have got your degrees and so on. I hope you would want to loan some of them to our new president, Dr. Irfan Ali. Yeah. But let us go straight into the program. We know that the opposition, which had been in government for 5 years, were cheated, I suppose, out of the election, many would allege. And there seems to be some problems in the teething stages of the opposition getting itself together. We see only recently many people coming out and condemning the choice of MPs and those for the National Assembly. And they were very upset and are very upset that very, very powerful workers in the coalition, members who have sacrificed and worked so very hard at 2 elections were sidelined without any explanation. But my question to you, John, as we go into this program, and you will be doing most of the talking, the question is, will the opposition be prepared and ready to defeat the PPP at the next general elections, and what must be done?
Norman, let me first of all take the opportunity to thank President Granger for his work he's done for the party and the country over the last 5 years and 15 years as a party. We appreciate what you have done, but at the moment, what we're looking at what went wrong in elections earlier this year, and how can we prepare for the next elections. Now, I'm going to start with, first of all, what happened in these elections, because we have to be very careful, because if you look at the official results, what we're seeing is exponential growth in the registered voters in Guyana. And I will give you some numbers. In 2011, we had 475,000 registered voters. In 2015, that rose to 586,000. And in this year's election, it is recorded as 661,000 votes, which means as a party, we have got to start to dissect who are our voters, what's going on the ground. And maybe we need to go back and look at who are our core voters, because if you look at our election results, our vote numbers rose over the 3 elections from 175 in 2011 207 in 2015 to nearly 280,000 on the official recount figures. But we still moved from 33 seats in 2011, 2015 to 31 seats, which meant the opposition growth was more than ours. It means, therefore, we're not speaking huge numbers of variation between the opposition and the government, but we need to actually do three things at the same time. We need to satisfy our core voters. Those are the people who actually decided, regardless of, they were going to vote for APNU ASC. We need to satisfy those. We also need to satisfy the swing voters, that is that small percentage who changes their mind, most likely based on economic issues. And then we need to look after the new voters, those 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So what you're asking me is to say, are we going to be ready? Yes, we could only be ready if we actually address all three groups simultaneously. Not in 2019 not in 2024, but in 2020. We need to start from today. And that's the first step. The first step is we need to, first of all, identify who are core voters, swing voters, and new voters. I think one of the other big problems we had in this election is that there is a possibility, from what I'm hearing on the ground, is that we may have lost, well, it's not just what I'm hearing on the ground. As a party, we said that there were basically a rigging of the ballots at the polling station. Now, it means, therefore, that we need to manage that better. We need to go back and actually look at the people who are going to be our observers there should not be someone who I actually just select for the day and send them into a polling station. Because if you look at our polling stations, we have 3,000 or nearly 3,000 polling stations in Guyana. If you break it down by numbers, you're talking about 50, 60 families per polling station, on average, that is. So if you actually have party stalwarts who look out for polling station, they will know exactly every single individual who should be turning up on that day. That's what grassroots politics really means. And I'm saying we need to go back to grassroots politics, whereby we have people in every single polling station area who understand who lives in every single household that's supposed to turn up at that ballot station. I'm saying that if we really want to get that quality back into having a win, we need to almost professionalize this sort of work. We need to have people working every day in opposition in lead up to the next election, not just when the election is actually picked up. So what I'm saying here is mobilizing a party grassroots group of nearly 3,000 people who's going to go back to the communities and be in charge in small blocks of the communities, so that we can have a dual system of communication, top down, bottom up. So we will know what the people want, when the people want it, and we can actually adjust our policies to actually suit the people. We will also be able to know on the spot if there's a fake vote or not. It will not be something done retrospectively. It will be addressed. The guy turns up, oh, your name is not Tom Jones. What are you doing here? Mm-hmm. I know you. You know, that's the sort of role we need to. We don't have a big country, so we need to be able to personalize that very much easily. Which comes back to my next big point is that I believe the diaspora has a very big role to play for this, because let's take a pin there. I'll come back to that. Let's think of why we lost the election.
Yeah.
The swing voters. The swing voters are very important. You've got to remember, and I know this from growing up in Guyana, having or living for your daily bread is not an easy task. When you wake up in the morning and you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, it's not an easy task. we're going to lose 10, 15,000 voters because they followed their breadbasket, it's not their fault, it's our fault. We need to address that. So that's something also we need to look into. We can't just say, oh, they're traitorous, they took money and went off and voted for the opposition. Did we look after them? We need to look at that.
What are some steps that can be taken and must be taken to address that?
Well, I actually think of Diaspora. Diaspora actually have a very big role to play for the development of Guyana. We are a very, very unique nation. We probably have a larger population outside of Guyana than inside of Guyana. And I've traveled the world. I've lived in every single continent. And I've seen Guyanese work with MNCs, not just as bottom-end jobs, top-end jobs, middle jobs, all sorts of jobs Guyanese working. And what we need to do is we need to organize our international diaspora.
Yeah.
And what they need to be doing, they need to be actually feeding back into those core voters. You know what I mean? It could be through finance. It could be through diaspora entrepreneurship. And I actually am strongly of the belief that the two groups we need to look at are the young voters and the female voters, because those two groups are the two most underrepresented when it comes to employment in Guyana. And we need to actually step up and assist that. This is not a blame I can say squarely it's in leadership. That blame comes from organization. And as a diaspora grouping, we should step into that mold to actually address that. And that by addressing that, what we will be doing is basically reducing the opportunity to lose those swing voters come the next general election, as well as possibly attracting new voters.
Remarkable, remarkable. And I believe that discussions should begin quite soon in that and those areas. When we look, let us go to how the cooperation can be had. When we look at what is happening and those allegations that are being made, we saw today a press statement where Carl Greenidge, a former minister of the coalition government, who is now an advisor to the People's Progressive Party on the Venezuela border issue, has launched a scathing attack on the coalition. We have also seen, John, that the WPA have walked away from the coalition. We've seen very many disgruntled party executives and officials out there saying that all is not well with the party. What advice do you have for the party as an urgent call to correct some of these problems so that we can proceed in the direction in which you are mentioning, to amalgamate that support, to fortify our the party, and to take it into victory?
Well, Norman, I think one of the most important things that as a nation we are struggling with is creating what we call structural change in our leaderships. As a party and as a government and as a country, we need leaders who are willing to go into government and change the way things are. So they need to actually manage change and manage structural change. We don't need someone who's going to come on board to allow things to take over, because if we take over, what's going to happen is we're going to actually lose ground to the Jagdeo Ali regime, because they're doing a lot of grassroots work, and we need to actually step up and match that, and then hold them accountable. Hence, that's why my petition that many of you have seen online for us to have Mr. Norton reinstalled as a parliamentarian and possibly leader of the opposition. We need someone in the next 4 years to sit in the trenches and meet the Jagdeo Ali regime head on. We need to actually match him and understand where he's going and what he intends to do. Because This is not a regime that's going to will sit back and allow us to just do what we want to do. They will actually harass our people. They will make our people go further down the pecking order of income earning, increase inequality gap in our country, and we need to hold them accountable. Um, what Mr. Norton brings to the table are many years of hard work. He also has political nous as to how to actually deal with the PPP, as well as how to deal with the issues they were bringing to the table. In the background, also, what we need to happen or have is a group of people who will understand how to create structural changes within the organization of the PNC as well as the opposition. And I say this because, as you mentioned earlier, what we're having are people dropping off the bandwagon, like the WPA leaving their part, the APNU. And what we're having is people are disgruntled. So what we need to do is to create a structural change where we reconnect with the core voters, as well as we work with the swing voters, and we actually try to entice or attract the new voters. But that can only come if we actually have a professional lobbying within the party and outside the party. So inside and outside the country, we need to do the lobbying. We need to do the checks, the voters checks, because as you know and I know, the biggest problem we need to look at is that voters list. But we need to know the voters list. You can't just sit down and say, okay, we're going to leave the Elections Commission to know the voters list. Guyana is not a huge country. If you have 650,000 on your voters list, it doesn't take a very long time for you to verify that as a party. It doesn't take a very long time for you to actually, as a party, to take an analysis as to what the people are looking for and what they're not. We have 10 regions. We have 3,000 potential ballot boxes, so voting agents. So what we need to do is to break it down, that 600,000 into the households, and then we have weekly, monthly reports coming back to the center, so we understand what's going on. And that's where we need to actually focus in the next, I would say the next 12 months. We need a strong leadership group, and then we need to focus on how to get to our voters.
If you were given the opportunity to have a meeting with the leader of the opposition, the party leader, Mr. David Granger, and you wanted to ask him to allow democracy to work in the party. You want to ask him to reconsider those members, those stalwarts who have sacrificed, who've got thousands of supporters out there who are even more disgruntled, not by only the losing of the election, but in the way it happened. And then now that party stalwarts and senior officials of the party, Valda Lawrence, Simona Brooms, James Anthony Bond, who has worked tremendously hard during the campaign, who has the attention of thousands and thousands of young people in Guyana. If you were to have the ear of the opposition leader, what would you say to him in that context?
I would say, first of all, this is not the time to culling our flock, because we are at a crossroads. The PPP in opposition went at all costs to win the last election. They did an all-cost campaign to win the elections. Now that they're in power, they will want to cement that leadership. They did not want a one-seat majority in Parliament. They wanted a two-seat majority because they saw how two governments were brought down in the last two elections. So they made sure they had that. via whatever means they set out to get that to happen. On the other hand, they're going to try and consolidate what they have got, which we've seen already started to happen. They will try to prosecute the people who they deem to be a serious threat to them. And what we are doing, and listen, I am all for youth. I'm all for youth inside Parliament. In fact, I was one of the greatest I had greatest criticism for the fact that after the last elections, we did not take a lot of younger people to Parliament. I was one of the greatest critics of that. But you cannot take sheep to the slaughterhouse and allow the wolves to look after them. That's where our problem is. You have to take people to Parliament who understand. It's like, for example, Maslow hierarchy of needs tells us, right? Now, when you start something new, you are at the bottom of that triangle. And at the bottom of that triangle, you are lost. You basically are trying to belong there. And if that's happening to our parliamentarians when they start the parliament, when they swear in, what will happen is, by the time they understand how Parliament works, and by the time they understand what they should be doing, it will be 18 months gone in Parliament, especially if they are not well managed. 18 months for a political regime is enough danger they could have actually done already to our country, because laws would have been passed, people would have been prosecuted, jobs would have been lost. They would have positioned themselves already for another election by the time our parliamentarians catch themselves. So what you need a greater mixture of youth as well as experience with a clear mandate of how it has to work. That's the reason why I said someone like Mr. Norton, someone like Miss Lawrence, someone like Miss Broom, someone like James Bond is very, very good inside a parliament now. Because what you need to do is to build up those young parliamentarians that we can actually get them into parliament, get them into position later on. It's a position for everyone, but it doesn't make sense you actually just populate your parliament with very young people who did not have the experience and knowledge and use to actually deal with a very crafty opposition or government. You already see in 3 weeks what they have done.
I was coming to that point. I was coming to that point. Go ahead.
The our AP and the AFC government did not actually do it in 5 years. They have actually came in 3 weeks and stepped in people. You know what I mean? That's just the beginning. That's the beginning. You know what I mean? The land deals we have in there with our brother, Mr. Lewis, and etc. All of those things are going to escalate. If we don't have people who understand the system and have the interest to deal with it.
But what is ironic, if not concerning, what is concerning, if not ironic, sorry, is the fact that the party has not responded to these, what I want to call violations that have happened and are happening presently. We saw a situation, John, where the former director of sports, Christopher Jones, he experienced, his family had a traumatic experience when the police would have visited his home and illegally entered his home. We saw the police disregarding that section of the police who are working with the politicians, with the government. Not all of the police, I must state, because many of the police have conducted themselves really great. But we've seen the police, 47 or more initially, barging into the home of Christopher Jones late at night when there was a blackout, and traumatizing his children. His 6-year-old daughter, was so traumatized when they snatched him from his home and took him away. And the child was asking, will my daddy ever come back? And that kinds of stuff. And Jones was handcuffed and I understand placed in the lockups for a night and a day. What is happening when lawyers would have gone there and they have a court order that's saying that, and something that is blocking the police from entering the premises, an injunction like that is blocking the police, and the police have totally disregarded that because they know they're working on the mandate of the government. And I understand from reliable sources that it is the minister within the office of the Prime Minister, Kwame McCoy, who will have been behind that operation of sending the police to intimidate Mr. Jones for some barber chairs that are Mr. Jones' barber chair. And he has the evidence, he has the paperwork to show that these are his stuff. The opposition collectively did not say anything, but we saw Mr. Norton on the ground there fighting. We saw Mr. Bond out there making representation. If the party is not organized enough to begin to deal with these issues that are emerging in such a terrible way, do you think that we can achieve the objectives that you're presenting to us?
Basically, that's the first stone thrown towards we call it a person who can actually go out and mobilize support for the APNU.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones is a vote getter, and what happened this week was a case of intimidation that was beset onto him, so that more or less to put you in the place. Mr. Brown, these are things that happen in most countries. What it is that basically when you have a bully, he asserts himself onto the population first. So they look to someone of stature to assert that bullyism onto him. And then everyone else will sit back and think, if it could happen to Mr. Jones, what are they going to do to me? So then therefore they back down and they will not confront the government. That's the whole point of the tactic. They know they can't convict him, but it was the idea that I can humiliate him and I can put him in the lockups. That's the whole idea of what they set out to do that night. Mm-hmm. I don't think that bullying can actually stop us from getting our objectives. I'm so happy when to see the support the APNU have got, not just in Guyana, but inside the diaspora. The many thousands who have actually came online and actually to support the petition to install Mr. Norton into Parliament has actually given me confidence that there is nothing the government can do to stop us from gaining power back at the next general elections in 5 years. We just need to have a very strong policy, and we need to get back our grassroots. We need to have in every single 5 blocks a party operation going on. So we understand what the people on the ground wants. We need to know when our people are hungry to feed them. We need to know when people are actually crying out for medical help and give them assistance. The biggest problem Guyana has got, and I know people tell me that friends of mine say, oh, it doesn't exist, but I'll tell you something. The first thing the PVP did 23 years ago was to destroy our institutions. Institutions that actually eliminates inequality in our society.
Yes.
One of the beautiful things about Guyana as a kid when I was growing up, and it's only now I can actually appreciate what Guyana had, was that if you were a poor guy and you actually decided one day you wanted to start a little farm, you could have gone to the Guyana Agriculture Bank, Guy Bank, and got a small loan and started your farm. Where can you go to get that now? Mm-hmm. There's nothing like that there. If you wanted to actually build a house, you go to the mortgage finance bank and you got a nice preferential loan. Now you'll say, okay, there is a private sector one, but who owns the private sector one? Is it owned by us? No, it's not owned by us. We don't have a commercial bank in our country that services the poor people. And I'm not going to say party people, I'm going to say poor people, because this is a big problem we have got in our country. It's not just we have got disparity between one party and the next party in our structure. We have poor and rich. And the rich people just basically align themselves to get more. And the poor people get poorer. So our party needs to sit out there and actually create back the structures that will actually give poor people access to finance to move away from poverty. Because poverty is the key thing. You know, you can't just have a system whereby a small man can't even go to a bank and deposit money easily. But rich people, they're moving millions and billions. Corrupt money, not even legal money. And a small man with a legitimate check would probably be rejected by the bank. That's what we need to change. Disparity in our financial institution, our healthcare, our education system. We need to change, and the judicial system, obviously, which is what we started out with. Because the judicial system is quite clear. Do you think, I don't want to call names, but if the person was of a certain economic background, they would have been treated as Mr. Jones was treated?
Mm-hmm. If they were particularly ethnic makeup
I'm not
also.
going to go down there because they're both sides. But what I'm going to say is that if you have money, you will not get treated like that. There are people who've done so much worse things than that, they don't even get held overnight. We have a system, a judicial system, where it seems as the more richer you are, the more you can get away with stuff. These are the inequality we need to change. It needs to be changed. It needs to be addressed, because the suppression of the poor and small man continues to happen. And that's one of the things that I feel grieved that when we were in government, we didn't address it more, because there are too many people getting sent to jail for stealing food, I would say. What they stole, it's so small, and they're getting sent to 3-4 years in jail. It costs the state more money to keep those people in jail than what they have actually just stolen. What sense does it make? Some people are going to jail for things they need help for. Housing, food, jobs. That's why some people commit some of the crimes that is going on again. You read the court paper and you'll see it. So we need to go back and think of how do we correct the institutions, and that will come from the policies that our central committee needs to put together so we can win back those votes.
Absolutely brilliant. John Jones, UK Guyanese educator, sitting down with Voice of the Diaspora to talk about the political issues. We're closing now. We've got about 5 minutes left. Getting back to the diaspora's involvement, realistically, if you were to say to our counterparts in the United States and in Canada, we need to kickstart that sort of networking. We need to do what is necessary and so on to ensure that, and to start immediately, to ensure that the diaspora is preparing itself to lend that kind of full support to our political party on the ground there. What will you say to our counterparts in the US and in Canada and the Isles of the Caribbean and elsewhere? And in the UK too.
And the UK, of course. I think one of the first things we need to do, we need to organize ourselves to understand what is the makeup of our diaspora. We need to almost create a study whereby, or a registration system, whereby we know who our diaspora is. And then from that, we need to create small grouping of interest. It doesn't have to be a formal something, but if in our diaspora, everyone can set themselves up into small groupings, and each grouping does a register to a main register. And then one of the other things that I would say is, from that, what you can do is things like adapting. If we can get, say, 3,000 small groupings globally, who can adapt one little area in Guyana within our party, so that that area actually deals with that diaspora group for help. with regards to funding for maybe jobs, entrepreneurships, or whatever. Because I actually look at an example of people actually see China and India and see how fast they're actually progressing. But what people don't understand is that no transaction happens in those countries if it doesn't go through the diaspora. The diaspora are the people who are the windows of opportunities within those countries. And we as a people, what we can do is, I'm sure if I say to guys, because we're so annoyed when we lost the election, if I can appeal to Guyanese, do you think that £10 or $10 a month is too expensive to actually contribute towards the development of a political party back home and its core voters or its stalwarts who work, the hard grind to make sure we get back in power? I think we need to ask that question. I think we need to ask ourselves, are we willing to actually contribute and put that $5, $10 there to make sure that the party is fully financed to meet its obligation, not just in the next general election, but in the preparation of the next general election? Because believe it or not, Norman, without money, we will not gain what we gain. The PPP spent a lot of money in their campaigns, and we did not spend half of that because we don't have the aptitude to actually collect that. So what we need to do is organize ourselves to collect that money. And then we need to dispense it in such a way that our party supporters will be fed, will be looked after. We create jobs within the party. There's so many jobs you can create within a party structure so that the people can actually gain something. You know, we don't have anything within our party that we can say is that, okay, that's our party guy, he runs that security business, or that one runs the, the chicken shop, or that one runs a tourism something. Mm-hmm. So that if that happens, is that we're creating jobs within for ourselves, our people become more confident, right? We can't expect the people in Guyana to put all their money in their pocket, go to their pockets to pay for elections. We in the diaspora feel the same way. We need to do this. It's not the how much you put in at one time. It's the consistency. So the Central Planning Committee can plan for it. We need monthly payments, $5, $10, $2. If you can contribute monthly, what it will do is it will actually allow the Central Committee to be more professional. And that's what I'm saying. If we get it right and we organize that right, we can actually be a force to be reckoned with at the next general elections.
Absolutely brilliant. John Jones, UK Guyanese educator, talking here with Voice of the Diaspora. And he's making a call to the diaspora. But we must first, John, unite. We have to be like PPP supporters and their backers. There must be that sort of unity and that will to support each other, that belief in each other. And finally, 1 minute to wrap up. We got 1 minute. Finally, how is the petition going? Are you going to make a call to the diaspora and to people in Guyana to continue to sign that petition to support Aubrey Norton? So what do you want to say to them?
I want us to continue because we had a phenomenal approach. I mean, the amount of people who've actually gone into that petition and signed it, I'm actually overwhelmed because I never expected such a great response.
Okay.
But the next part I saw was a lot of people who contacted me saying that they're scared of retributions. There's no retributions the way this petition was set out. No one will know who signed it. No one will know. Basically, the way in which the organization I use to actually set up the petition makes it so almost impossible for someone to actually understand who signed it. But once we get the numbers, what we're saying to the leadership of the PNC is that we think that we need to show Guyana and the other political parties what democracy is. Yeah. It was never in the rules that we should have a term limit on parliamentarians. It's not in our constitution for this to happen. We always pick the best people to sit in parliament. I do understand you want youth to actually step up. But it doesn't have to be 100% youths. It could be a clear mixture. You cannot take out the entire leadership in the party, the people who connected with the audience, the people who connect to the grassroots. You can't just take them all out and discard them because the people on the ground have not actually formed a bond yet with the new people you've put forward. You need to put them in cohesion so that they can form that bond, so that we can continue to support the party. My plea is, as a party, we don't want to lose confidence in such a way that we can go back to the 23 years of PPP brutality at our young boys and women in our country, and us feeling as if we are a narco state when we go out. To you, it might be just normal, but to us living in diaspora, when we pick up the papers and see seizure from Guyana, it hurts us. It makes us feel bad. When we jump on the plane and the custom officer treats you as if you are a terrorist or something, it's not a nice feeling. That's why we need our country to be looked upon and viewed upon as something of utmost good. We want to have good opposition to hold the government accountable. Before I go, I want to say I saw a video with President Granger actually saying yesterday, and he did actually say how disgusted he was of the oppression of the people when losing jobs and so on. But one of the things he said that actually resonated with me was that he said that the PPP is moving back towards where we were under the 23 years rule very quickly. Or he actually alluded to that. It's so true. We don't want to go back to that. We want to come home to Guyana and feel comfortable. We want to come home to Guyana and know that when we're coming back to the international airports, we will not be treated with dogs and so on, smelling us all over the place. You know what I mean? So what we want is a government held accountable by a strong opposition. So I'm pleading, dear Mr. President, please, let's get strong leadership in Parliament so that we can actually hold Jagdi and Ali accountable. These are not ordinary times. We need strong people who will fight in the gutters, who will sit there to win us something for our people. If we send weak opposition to Parliament, that oil money will disappear. Poor people will see nothing. We need people who will hold them accountable for that. They do not go to power because they just want power. They want more than that. And if we don't understand scrutiny and governance, we will be losing that battle even further. The inequality gap will become even bigger. When I teach economics, I call it the inequality gap, the big belly. That belly will get even bigger as poor people fall further down the pits. That's what I beg for. Strong opposition so that we can fight the battle for the poor and the underprivileged in our country. That's what our founder leader did. And that's what I want for my country. Thank you for having me, Norman.
John, and thank you for being here. Hopefully, we will get you back here soon as you begin to organize and mobilize the diaspora or to help in the rebuilding of the party and to better prepare us to face the PPP successfully and going to victory. Certainly, John Jones there, right here on Voice of the Diaspora. Very, very, very powerful deliberations. Thank you, John, for being on the program. Thank you very much. And do have a pleasant evening. For all my viewers, we are now looking for persons who will participate in the discussion about whether there is obia existing and whether evil spirits can possess people, or whether it is a mental health issue that has to be addressed by experts. And therefore, just send in your names and contact me via Messenger or via my WhatsApp. Please sign the petition We will share it one more time on my page and also on John Jones's page. So please sign the Aubrey Norton's petition and let us keep the ball rolling. Thank you very much, John, for being on the program. And
Thank
thank
you.
you to my viewers for tuning in once again. Do have a pleasant Sunday evening and be ready, stay COVID free as we fight this struggle to confront the wicked PPP. Good evening.